because many women confuse the difference between a coach, a mentor, and a sponsor. And so I have to help them understand that a coach is someone who talks with you, like, hey, we're working on this problem together. We're going to work on it together, back and forth. A mentor is someone who talks at you. So, like, when I first started working, both my parents were teachers. I had no idea what a business dinner was. My first business dinner, I called my mentor. I'm like, what does one do? And she's like,
Yes.
wear your business casual clothes. Don't show up late. Don't have more than one glass of wine. And if they go out after, just don't go. And I'm like, okay. She talked at me. She told me, or talked to me, and she told me exactly what to do, and it was perfect. A sponsor talks for you, and women do not cultivate that relationship because sponsors create opportunities. And a lot of women say, okay, that sounds great, but how do I get a sponsor? And a lot of women think their mentor is their sponsor. It is not.
Welcome to the Leadership That Shines podcast, the weekly leadership training show that's built around 3 values that show up in everything we do: impact, influence, and growth. Whether you're leading a team, building a business, or learning to lead yourself first, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Natalie Davis. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Leadership That Shines podcast. I am your host, Natalie Davis, and I am so excited to be back with all of you. And thank you for all of the new listeners. I want to let you know, I appreciate you reaching out. I love all of the messages and comments that have been coming in on social media. Feel free to continue to have those coming into us. Comment here in the show, wherever you're watching. I typically keep the comments open. So you can leave comments as well, or you can email us at themagic@leadershipthatshines.com. But I am having an amazing time connecting with some phenomenal leaders, learning about leadership traits and qualities and attributes that contribute to phenomenal and exceptional leadership. And today is no exception to that, because we do have a guest. Nicole Johnston is joining us. And Nicole, I'm so honored to have you join us today. Nicole, I am going to say I've done a little bit of cyber stalking. I think it's healthy to say it if I admit to it. But you are known as a women's excellence and leadership speaker, which just speaks to my heart. You are a best-selling author. You have your own coaching platform and coaching program that you've rolled out. Years of experience in the corporate space, and now helping other leaders to build exceptional lives and thriving businesses and all of the things as we talk about leadership. So, Nicole, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
I am as well. I always get so excited when I see individuals that are working in similar spaces, and you have the corporate background that you're bringing into this coaching and speaking space. You're also a TEDx speaker, if I'm not mistaken.
You're
Also a
correct.
TEDx
Yeah.
speaker. I want to make sure that I don't forget that. But before we dive into where you are today, I'd love to just give you a moment to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your journey that's brought you to where you are today.
Sure. So I spent 30 years working in consumer products. So if you think about things like toilet paper, laundry detergent, shampoo, skincare, I worked in all those categories. In fact, most of the listeners probably have something in their house that I worked on. And so
Mhm.
it was
Yes.
a real privilege to work for some blue chip companies like Procter and Gamble, Kimberly-Clark, Newell Brands, Hershey Foods. And throughout that, I was quite often a unicorn in that there weren't a lot of female sales leaders. And I
Oh.
was one of the few female sales leaders. And I got to be in the room where it happened, in the discussions where it happened. And when I was there, I realized how much of what goes on in these companies we never teach, especially to women, people of color. And because of that, they're missing the, secret sauce of how to get ahead. And it was through those experiences and me trying to help all the people who worked for me thrive that I realized I wanted to do that more broadly. So that's why I stepped
Mhm.
away from consumer products and have my own business now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nicole, when you're talking about these skills, we're talking about the unspoken things,
Yeah.
right? We're going beyond policy and expectations in terms of the role.
Yeah.
There's like an unspoken culture and understanding as it pertains to leadership and the skills that are needed to continue to advance, especially when you're in the corporate space. And and I think more so when you're looking at solopreneurs and entrepreneurs, you have to really embody all of those qualities and attributes. So what are some of the things that you discovered before taking that exit out of the corporate space?
I think the biggest discovery is the understanding that promotions are not based on your ability to complete tasks. Promotions are
Wow.
based on the perception of your leadership potential.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's the perception of your potential. That's
Yeah.
I feel like that is such an like that leaves it up to so much risk, right? Like that's the gamble instead of
Yep.
hanging your hat on the tangible, measurable piece that you have today.
Yeah. And when you have, especially women, we are socialized to put our head down, get it done. That's how we got the gold stars when we were little girls. We play nice with
Yeah.
everyone and we just get things going along. And, if someone
Yeah.
else is going to step up and talk about it, that's fine because I did the right work. That
Yeah.
doesn't work because instead of being viewed as someone who has leadership potential, you're viewed as a pro in place who's indispensable at doing their tasks, but you've never really demonstrated the thinking, you haven't demonstrated the communication, you haven't demonstrated the interest to do more. So you become easy to overlook. And senior leadership may not know who you are, but they know that you're super important in your role. And because of that, you're just
Mm.
not considered for things anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. You're doing an amazing job. Keep up the great work because we need
Exactly.
someone like you in that spot. So don't
Yep.
stop.
And you are
Oh,
the backbone of the organization because you deliver the critical work,
yeah.
but then the organization never considers you for anything else because you just put your head down and do the critical work.
Mm, mm. Tell me about this transition then. Once you've recognized this and you realize that you're not in the right space, that you can have a greater impact in more lives and help to equip these individuals, people of color, women,
Mhm.
to truly step into the space of leadership. What was that journey like for you? Just the transition? Because again, being an entrepreneur is its own beast, right? You
Oh, yeah.
have the stability and comfort of being in in the corporate space, but also everything that comes along with it.
Mhm.
And so, to put that to the side, to become an entrepreneur, what was that journey like for you, and what did you uncover about yourself?
Well, as I was going on the journey, it was really fascinating because once you get to a certain level in large corporations, you stop having to do a lot of stuff because there's people in the organization who will do it for you. And
Mm,
I figured out very quickly that I don't want to spend my time on things that I hate. So, no offense whatsoever to the accountants of the world, because God bless
mhm.
you, because you do the work that I hate. I am perfectly willing to pay an accountant to do my books because that is not something I want to do and it does not leverage my skills and capabilities. And so I remember I was in a meeting at Procter& and Gamble after I'd been working for like 10 years and Susan Arnold was the chief operating officer of the company and she came to speak to the women's group and she talked about how she puts her time, which is her most valuable resource, where she can add value. And she
Mm,
said, I have the blackest thumb possible. I add no value when it comes to my backyard, to lawn maintenance, nothing like that.
yeah.
I add no value when it comes to cleaning a toilet. I add value when it comes to taking my kids to the doctor. I add value
Um,
when it comes to being there for my kids at dinner. And if I'm not going to add value, I'm going to pay for it. Now, obviously, the chief operating officer of Procter& and Gamble has a little bit more disposable income than the rest of us.
exactly.
However,
Yes.
I still use that guiding principle because the amount of time it would take me for me to do my books
Uh-huh.
versus shoveling everything in an accountant and having it give it back to me,
Yeah.
so worth the money for me because that's how much I hate it. And so
Yeah.
my biggest change is becoming an entrepreneur is recognizing what I want to pay for, where I want to spend my time, and where I want to lean in because time is your most finite quantity. Finite quality that you have, and so
Yeah.
spend it wisely.
Yeah. I feel that that's probably one of the most valuable pieces of advice that you could have received because when people get into the entrepreneurship space, one thing is that there's kind of this maybe misunderstanding or belief that you have to do it all, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you don't scale until you have the ability and the bandwidth to scale, right? And so recognizing very quickly there are things that I am skilled at and not skilled at. There are things that I will pay for, and then things that just will not happen.
Yeah.
And you have to get crystal clear on that. And I think, Nicole, the other big piece is like honoring it because we'll get in that spot where it's like, well, you know what? Maybe I can do.
Yeah.
And I'll make that an I statement. This year, I started to scale back a little bit in some things, and I had a little bit more time on my schedule. I was like, maybe I can do my own taxes this year. And I quickly had a meeting with myself, like, that is not your space.
No.
Send everything to the accountant, let her do her job, and she'll get everything to you, right? Like,
Yeah.
collect what you need to and
Absolutely.
send it over. But we often feel as entrepreneurs, we kinda have this misconception that we have to wear all of the hats, and there may be moments that we do, but to some degree, you can outsource, you can scale, you can say no and give it to
Yeah.
someone else, partner, what have you.
But I think it's really important to recognize not only do entrepreneurs think that they have to wear all the hats, they also many times feel that they have to take all the hats in the store. And
Yeah.
there are things out there that are completely irrelevant to you, your business, your target audience,
Mhm.
all of that. But because someone else is using that hat, you suddenly are like, oh my gosh, I guess I have to. No,
Yeah.
absolutely not. Because
Mhm.
we can't do 100 things well. We can pick a
Right.
small handful to do well and effectively, and the more you
Right.
spread yourself thin across all of that, the less effective you'll be in total.
I think that's huge. That is a piece that we wanna make sure that the listeners don't miss, right?
Mhm.
Like, getting so dialed in on it.
Yep.
Beautiful. And
Yep.
so you coming out of the corporate space, you knew that your target audience, you knew who your ideal client was.
Yeah.
Tell me about building out the offering or the product or the service. What
Yes.
because that's the thing, right? What's the first thing that you do? Is it the speaking? Is it the book? Is it creating the coaching program? Do you have to create a new framework? For those that are not in this space, those are all of the many thoughts that entrepreneurs have within this space every single day.
Yeah.
So, how did you uncover what tool or resource or framework you needed to create first?
Well, for me, I probably had a different approach than a lot of people because coming from consumer products companies where I was working on billion-dollar brands regularly, I actually started with my branding because I have a name that is too common that it can't be my brand because there's too many
Yes.
Nicole Johnstons in the world. And so
Yes.
I am so envious of the people who have really interesting, unique names and that is their brand. I'm like, oh, jealous. But
Yes.
anyway, so I started with my branding because I wanted to go through the entire branding process, which a lot of people think branding is logo creation. That's
Yeah.
actually the last step of the branding process.
Yeah.
Branding is who you are, what you stand for, what you don't stand for, what it
Right.
means, and how it all comes together. And it's all of the thinking around that. And after you get all of that locked in, then eventually you get to your logo. But for
Mhm.
me, it was really important to make sure that I had a brand that was positive, that represented me, that represented what I wanted to deliver, and that is where I started. Now, parallel
Mhm.
path, I also went and did all the stuff to get all certifications and all that kind of thing at the same
Yes.
time. But then
Yes.
once I had that, that's when I really started developing my program. And as I was developing my program, so minor sidebar, if you're having a trivia night, you want me on your team because I have so much ridiculous knowledge in my brain. And I have so many people who were saying to me, oh my God, you should write a book. And so as I was writing out and developing my program, I just kept having things that I was writing on that were longer.
Right.
And it ended up being a parallel path as well that I developed my program at the same time I wrote my book because they just ended up being
Wow.
so much in synergy.
Yes. That's huge and a huge undertaking, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Um, Going through the process of figuring out not who you are, but who's the company, right? Like, what does the
Mhm.
company stand for? Who are we going to serve? How are we going to best serve them, right? Who are we
Yep.
serving and how do we best serve them? And as you're putting your thoughts and ideas together, the book is actually also forming alongside,
Yeah.
in parallel, in tandem as you're
Yeah.
creating everything. I
Hmm.
I love that. I love that. And As you're uncovering these things, like looking at the creation of the book, and kudos to the people that always give you that gentle, like, you have what it takes, just go ahead and put it together. You have all of the ideas. Kudos to those folks.
Absolutely.
But where did you see the focus leaning, for both your program and the book? Where do those land?
When I was still in corporate, I remember one of the first times when I had people reporting to me and that I was responsible for their compensation plan.
Mm.
And the first time you're responsible for that, you of course don't want to do anything wrong. You want to make sure you're coloring within the lines and everything.
Uh-huh.
And I remember getting a plan and looking at my team's plans and thinking, this doesn't make a lot of sense because I have two people, one woman, one man, who largely same experience, largely same ratings and reviews, yet the man was making significantly more. And I remember going, huh, this doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And when many companies have a very rigid program of, we do ratings on this date and then we announce
Yeah.
the raises on this date and it implements on the Procter& and Gamble floats. It goes more over it, but it floats for 100,000 people. And so when you're asking questions that go against that machine, the machine can get a little cranky. But I
Mhm.
wanted to understand why this woman was making less than a man.
Mhm.
And HR said, "Oh, he's rated better." And I'm like, "Is he?" Because from what I see, they're the same. And, I had to go back and forth on it. And finally, I was able to get her the raise she should have gotten. And I would love to say that was the last time I needed to do that. It ended up being the first. And literally every team I went into after that, within the first week, I would review everybody's salaries. And on every single team, I had to fix at least one woman's salary. And if it was a woman of color, it was going to be a whole process because they were usually so far behind. And so throughout my career, I recognized how much women, people of color, people with disabilities, people who were LGBTQ needed that extra assistance. And it became very obvious to me. And so as I was leaving corporate and as I was setting up my business, that whole feeling came with me that said, I want to help the people who maybe don't know they need the help because women aren't
Mhm.
told, hey, we're underpaying you. That
Right.
is never said. So maybe they don't know they need the help. They're usually the last they're going to invest in is themselves because they'll invest
Mhm.
in their family, their kids, their business, anything before themselves.
Yes.
And they're never getting the clear conversations about maybe why they're not progressing, what needs to be true to get them ahead, how to ask for things. And so it was very clear to me that was the group I wanted to help. And as I was going through the branding and the planning and everything else, it just naturally
Mhm.
came together.
Mhm. Wow. Nicole, that's huge. And I think that goes back to where we started the conversation originally, especially for women. Like, it's get your gold star, right? You need to make sure that all the boxes are checked, all the work is complete. And let's just face it, especially those of us that are like working moms, I feel like you give, and I have this biased belief. You want something to get done, give it to a busy working mom and it's going to get done.
Yep.
But I don't have that same belief if I think if I need the visionary thinker at the table, am I thinking about the busy working mom to be the person that I invite to come to the table to have that visionary thinking, that forward thinking, the futuristic conversations? And so not only is it built into that corporate structure, I think it's kind of ingrained in some of our own bias beliefs that we carry.
Oh my gosh, let me give you some data that'll horrify you on this. So, if you are working a full time job, that's roughly 2,000 hours of work in a year.
Uh-huh.
That's what you're supposed to be getting paid for to show up to the company and help them earn. Now, on top of that, working moms have another 520 hours of the mental load. That is the planning the doctor's appointments, remembering where the uniform is, packing the bag, knowing if we're out of milk, all of that stuff. 520 hours. So that's like
Yeah.
having two full-time jobs for a quarter of the year. Oh,
Uh-huh.
but wait, there's more. And then at work, there's another 200 hours of mental load work. Why does this matter? Is that because 720 hours of work that women do is non-promotable, gives them no credit, and it's why women burn out. And
Yeah.
so when you're talking about giving it to a busy mom, they'll get it done? Absolutely. Is it the work that will get them recognized to get promoted? Absolutely not.
No. Oh my gosh. That statistic, those numbers, it's staggering to me. And
Mhm.
it's so funny because and it's not funny. I just out of my own journey and my own reflection, I had the same observation, Nicole, a few weeks ago. I was thinking, I'm an empty nester now. So both of my children are adults and they're living their fabulous adult lives. But just the ease and simplicity of me easing into my day and getting my day started. And I share my story of what my days look like when I had children, like living at home, right? And it's
Mhm.
completely different. If I needed to find quiet time to do my morning routine, that was probably happening at 4:30 or 5 o'clock before there was movement in the house, right? So it's that extra
Right.
time so I can find it and carve it out. And then I started to think about like all of the decisions that I made before we even left the house, right? It's
Oh, yeah.
what are the kids going to wear? What are they going to eat? Have I packed the lunch? Have I signed the permission slip, right? It's what do we have on the schedule or the agenda for the upcoming week, sporting events? And so it's like a number of decisions that I ended up making prior to even getting in the car to go to school, right? And
And
it's
not even recognizing the amount of work that was, because
exactly.
I'm a mom. It's what I do.
Yes.
So one of my
Yes.
all-time favorite quotes by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who I adore, when her son's school kept calling her, she replied, "The child has two parents, alternate calls."
Mm, that's beautiful. That is
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank
And
you.
when you don't
That's a
even
nice, gentle reminder. Yes.
yes, but when you don't even recognize all the work you're doing, it's really hard to step back from it. And so that's
Yeah.
why for all women, I highly recommend that for a week, you just note every single task, whether it
Uh,
is putting something in the washer, whether it is making a note on the laundry or that you need laundry detergent, whether it
mhm.
is planning your dinner, whether it is preparing dinner, whether it's cleaning up after dinner, whether it's taking the notes at the meeting, whether it's remembering to celebrate the birthdays at work, whether it's saying, oh no, we can't order that place from lunch because Joe's allergic to avocados. All of that is
Yeah.
work. And
Yes.
you are frequently giving away your incredibly valuable time against tasks that do absolutely nothing for your career. So take
Mm,
a week and write it all down. And then
yeah.
when you get your list, be horrified because you will be,
Uh-huh.
and then start to make changes. Have discussions with your partner, have discussions with your children, have discussions with your boss, your peers, and say, uh-uh, because it is
Yeah.
not fair. That's all necessary work. I'm not saying it's not, but it shouldn't all fall on you.
It doesn't have to be your responsibility.
Not at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like the cognitive burden of it all. And again, like you said, we don't measure it, we don't even recognize it. It's just a part of our day. And then you have those moments, the later seasons in life where you go back and you question, how the heck did I do it all? How did I keep all of the balls in the air?
Yeah.
And then not I'll tell you quite honestly, not thinking about the impact that it had on my professional career, right? I just think about it as how did I do it all and not what were those missed opportunities that I may or may not have had, right?
Yeah.
Nicole, how
And
do you help your clients today? What does this look like? Like empowering individuals, one, to even recognize the disconnect, because this is data that I was not privy to. So thank you for sharing that with us.
yeah,
But once you have clients that reach out to you, talk to us a little bit about how you are able to help them in recognizing the gap, if it's in pay, the overextension, the cognitive burden that they are carrying, the load, the cognitive load that they're carrying with them, all of those things. How do you help your clients in that space?
the place that I usually start is helping them understand how they self-sabotage. And a lot of people are going to say, well, I don't do that. Everyone does it. It
We all
doesn't,
do.
yeah,
Yeah.
everyone does it. And so
Yes.
what you need to understand is how you self-sabotage. Because once
Mm,
you start to get your arms around that, you can change how you're reacting to things. Instead of reacting with that self-sabotaging behavior, pause, take a beat, and figure out how to bring your best self forward. So
yeah.
that is the very first thing, because I can tell someone to say, no, you're not going to take notes anymore at work, and then have someone be like, I'm not taking, no, that's not helpful.
No. No.
That's not going to do you any favors. So instead,
That also is not going to help you in your career.
no, definitely not. So instead, let's first of all make you aware of the self-sabotaging behaviors. Then let's give you tools so you can bring your best self. And then we do so much role play because you don't want the first time that you have a challenging conversation to
Mhm,
be the actual conversation.
mhm.
You want to have the muscle memory, whether it's you're washing your hair, chopping tomatoes, whatever, you're having that conversation through your body and your mouth and everything gets more fluent in it. So when you
Yeah,
go to talk to your boss about, "Hey, you know what? I'm just not going to be doing this anymore. That work needs to move on
yeah,
to someone else." That you're not going to be in there going, "Oh my god," because it won't be the first time. So
yeah,
there's lots of role plays that we do, lots of journaling, reflections, but it's about helping you internalize the positive
mhm.
changes you want to make so that way that when you're responding, it's your best self.
I love that. Nicole, I am wanting to go back and just really stress the importance of the role play. And if conversation, like you said, conversations that you're having with yourself while you're doing other household work or things of
Mhm.
that nature, just simply allowing your body to feel what it feels like to say those words, to have those
Yeah.
thoughts, right?
Yes.
Um, because the moment you can, like you said, we can all embrace the fact that we're going to start saying, no, thank you. That's not for me, or I'd rather not, or whatever that sounds like. But what the moment that you say no, thank you to another person who has expectations of you,
Mhm.
it turns into no, thank you, or maybe just reach back out in a couple of weeks and I'll see. No, it's a no, thank you, period. End of discussion. Let's move on
Yeah.
to the next thing. Right. And
Yeah.
so, unless we start to get comfortable with those words, saying those words, feeling it in our body, if we don't practice it, we're going to have those discussions with other people and we're going to end up saying yes when we should have said no.
Exactly. I cannot tell you the amount of role plays I've done with my cat, and I mean, it's just
Yeah.
I've had to get fluent in it. And another incredibly powerful tool is to record yourself. You've got a
Yes.
computer sitting in your hand. Record yourself. Watch it. Flinch.
Yes.
Record yourself again, flinch less, record
Yes.
yourself again, but you will get much more fluid and fluent in it, and it will
Yeah.
be that much more comfortable when it comes time to have the discussion. Because if
Hmm.
you're nervous, you just haven't said it enough. You wanna have
Right.
50 or 100 reps in before you have that conversation for the first time with the actual person.
Yeah. I love that. I actually used this tool just this week. I was traveling and I started just having these role play conversations with myself in the bathroom mirror. You know, they always have
Yep.
the magnifying mirror, and there's nothing that is more in your face than a magnified version of your face where you're looking into your own eyes and
Oh,
having
yeah.
that conversation. And then you walk away, you're like, that feels good. We're
Yeah.
good. This
Yeah.
I own that as part of who I am now.
And I would recommend when you're doing that, you don't necessarily have to video record it, but at least audio record it because there's gonna be
Yeah.
times you're gonna practice and you'll be like, "Oh, that was good. What'd I say?" And you won't
Yes.
be able to remember it. And so if
Yes.
you audio recorded it, it will be super helpful because I guarantee you the one time you don't record it, you will have been, like, brilliant, and you will wonder what it
Yes.
was that you had said.
Exactly, and never be able to recall it ever again.
It
That's
gets
it.
so frustrating. So frustrating. Yes.
So, identifying self-sabotaging behavior
Yep.
and actions,
Mhm.
that we're taking, things that we say, things that we do,
Yep.
is the first step with individuals. Once they're able to identify those self-sabotaging behaviors that pop up in their lives, kind of the habits that pop up,
Mhm.
where can they expect to go next, right? Because it's not identify the self-sabotaging behavior and you get a raise at work. There's some progression that's happening in between there. What's that look like?
The progression is going to vary completely by person. Some people, I have to work on their communication skills because if you want to be seen as a leader, you have to have executive communication. And what that means is clear, concise, and compelling. So let me give you an example. When I was working at Procter& and Gamble, A.G. Lafley became the CEO, and he was stepping up after the previous CEO who wasn't doing the best job. And so
Mhm.
he comes in, he does like a 90-day assessment, and he puts out an email to the organization. Again, 100,000 people. He puts out an
Mhm.
email that basically says, everything that we're doing is in service of the consumer. You need to know the consumer is boss. 4 words, the consumer is boss. 100,000 people then went, huh, is what I'm doing in service of the consumer? And if I'm not, how do I need to change that? And so he's changed an entire organization with 4 words.
Yeah.
And everybody was laser focused on this is what we got to do. Consumer is
Yeah.
boss. Then the next year, he came out and said, the consumer is boss. And the first place we get to talk to them is at the store, whether it's online or in a physical store.
Mhm.
That is the first moment of truth. So we're like, we got to win the first moment of truth, and the consumer is boss. Okay. Again, 100,000 people knew their marching
Yeah.
orders. That is exactly what we were going after.
Yes.
Basically, the first moment of truth, 5 words, consumer is boss for 9
Mhm.
words guided 100,000 people.
Yes.
So then AG retires, a new CEO comes in. His opening email is 3.5 pages long, and everybody went, "Ooh, there's a new sheriff in town."
Oh, wow. Hmm. Without bullet points at the beginning, just
Nope.
3 pages, no bullet points. Okay,
Yeah,
so you've missed a quarter of the population. Half of the
exactly.
quarter of those people are not going to read it at all.
At
That's
all.
yes.
And
Okay.
that's what happened with his leadership of the organization. It was long and blown out and blowhard and windy, and AG had to come back and be CEO again. And so the clarity, the concision, the compelling nature of
Yes.
that guy who was CEO for a while wasn't there. And so what happens is because women are socialized to be right, to
Mhm.
be perfect,
Mhm.
to make sure that there can't be anything wrong, we lead with data. We don't lead with insights. We lead with, let me tell you everything about why I'm right, not the big idea. And so we are not socialized to communicate as leaders. We are
Yes.
socialized to communicate as doers. And so
Mhm.
we have to change that communication. And that changes how you walk in a room.
Mhm.
Communication is not always verbal. When you
Yeah.
walk in a room, do you scurry to the chair in the back or do you take a beat and assess the room and then come in?
Yeah.
Communication looks like, what is the agenda you send out for the meeting? What are you expecting out of it? Communication is how you talk in a meeting. Do you state your point or do you do the, well, you probably already thought of this, but, or I'm probably not right,
Mm.
but do you
Yes.
dismiss yourself in it? Do you let men take credit for your ideas? The amount of times a woman says something and then a guy heats it and suddenly he's brilliant. Do you
Mhm.
reclaim that idea or do you let him run with it? That's
Mhm.
all executive communication. And when you don't know how to do that, it's very hard for people to perceive you as a leader because they don't
Mhm.
see you communicate as a leader.
Mhm. Oh my gosh. I think those are all the pieces that when you talk about the things that are not actually trained or taught, that's those are the things that you don't pick up on, right? And that's
Right.
I think that they're again, this is where you have to embody these things. It's not a matter of own and command the room when you walk into it. There are small intricacies that are involved in doing so, right? And it
Yeah.
starts well before you even open your mouth and say anything.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. That's
So, how
huge.
many times when you're working on a project, going all the way back through college, all the way through, do you do all the work and, oh, you just are so much better at the slides. Can you do them? So, you put the whole deck together and then a man presents it
Mhm, mhm.
and you don't get any credit for it.
Yeah.
I'll give you another example. I was working at a company that we had a product allocation on, which meant we had more demand than we had product available. So we had to say, all right, customer X gets what this, customer Y gets that, and customer Z gets that. We had to map it all out. I had 2 people working on it for me, and the guy was telling everybody, "Oh my god, allocation's so hard, all this work, oh." Just a whole world heard how hard the allocation was for him. He
Mhm.
did maybe 10% of the work. The woman who was working on it put her head down and got it done and did
Wow.
90% of the work.
Yeah.
And then when it came time for personnel reviews, my peers were talking about, well, he should be rewarded. He worked so hard. I'm like, no, 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 no.
Wow.
Absolutely not. While
Yeah.
yes, he did work on the allocation, she did the work.
She
He
did the
talked about
execution.
it. She
Yes.
did it. But the thing is, if I hadn't been in the room and I hadn't known that, he would have
Right.
gotten the credit.
Right. Oh my gosh. Wow. And so it's not even just a look at me, look what I've done. It's just simply having that presence and
Yeah.
sharing it. And like you said, it was compelling. Like people bought into it. They're like, oh, well, he's doing so much work and he's overwhelmed. And look at it. Yes, he's doing the heavy lift.
Yep. And he wasn't. And
Yeah.
so that also leads to one of the next things after communication that I focus on with people, and that is sponsorship. Because many
Yeah.
women confuse the difference between a coach, a mentor, and a sponsor. And so I have to help them understand that a coach is someone who talks with you, like, hey, we're working on this problem together. We're going to work on it together, back and forth. A mentor is someone who talks at you. So,
Hmm.
like, when I first started working, both my parents were teachers. I had no idea what a business dinner was. My first
Yep.
business dinner, I called my mentor. I'm like, "What does one do?" And she's like,
Yes.
"Wear your business casual clothes. Don't show up late. Don't have more than one glass of wine. And if they go out after, just don't go." And I'm like, "Okay."
Yes.
She talked at me. She told me or talked to me, and she told me exactly what to do, and it was perfect. A sponsor talks for you, and women
Mm,
do not cultivate that relationship because sponsors create opportunities. And a lot of women say, okay, that sounds great, but how do I get a sponsor? And a lot of women think their mentor is their sponsor. It is not. A
no.
sponsor is someone who you have worked with. They could be in your reporting line, it could have been on a project, could be someone in your industry you did a panel with, whatever. Someone who is familiar with your work product.
Uh,
After that, you continue the relationship with the person. It's not just
mm,
the out of sight, out of mind. You still work with them. You try to solve problems for them. You continue to make them aware of what you're doing, what you want to work on, where you want to go. Because then that person is in the room where it happens. And when they're
yeah.
talking about the special opportunity, the project, the promotion, that person puts your name out. And when
Wow.
you don't have a sponsor, it's really, really hard to break through those discussions. So,
Right.
mapping out a sponsorship potential is one of the critical tasks I do with the people who I coach because a lot of women don't think through that critical factor and then just do it naturally, whether it's on the golf course or in the bathroom or whatever. That's where they
Yes.
have those conversations that women don't. And so, cultivating sponsorship is absolutely critical.
I love that. Nicole, thank you so much for that piece. And thank you for just describing it to the listeners in terms of the difference between a coach, a mentor, and a sponsor. And I think you're absolutely right. Like thinking about myself when I was in, now I've been an entrepreneur for many, many years, but when I was in the corporate space, I just had the assumption that my manager had my back, right? Like my manager, my direct supervisors got me. They see what I do. If there's an opportunity that pops up that is a great fit for me, of course they'll put my name in the hat for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's one thing that is a common misperception or misconception that so many
Uh-huh.
people had. Like in my last job, I had 97 people in my organization. There is simply no way I can know what everybody's working on.
Yeah.
I love that you think I'm smart enough to do that, but no, you have
Right.
got to tell me. And so, like, literally, it took me 8 months, but I had a one on one with every single one of them because I needed to know what they wanted to be when they grew up. Because if you're
Yes.
in a sales role, but your goal is actually to be a CFO, I got to get you over to customer finance. If you're in this role, but you actually want to go international, I need to put you on these projects. But if I don't
Yes.
know, I can't do that. And so I spent a lot of time trying to understand who people were and what they wanted to do, but that still didn't tell me what they were working on every day. So
Uh-huh.
you have got to tell your boss. Never, ever, 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 ever assume your boss knows because they don't.
They don't. Yeah. Nicole, can we stay on that for a little bit? Because I
Sure.
think you took the opportunity 8 months to have those one-on-one discussions with everyone, even if it's just happening and you don't have that intentional leader that's in a spot and it's just happening during your performance evaluation. At some point, someone says, "Well, where do you see yourself in the next couple of years?" or "How do you see yourself growing with the company?" Well, however they pose the question, if you're not prepared to answer that question, it's, well, I don't know. I'm kind of happy with what I'm doing. So then you start to stumble. Again, the practice isn't put in
Yep.
in there. How do you advise individuals to be prepared to answer that question or just simply advocate for themselves if the question's never posed? How can they say that in a way that does not seem like it's just self-serving, even
Yeah.
though it is, and that's kind of healthy?
But it is absolutely healthy. You have
Yes.
to own your
Yes.
development plan. No one else will. You
Um,
100% have to own it. And so that means that you're going to have to think about what you need and ask for it. Now, with your mentors, with your coach, with your sponsor, you should be having conversations with them before you get into your development plan, your review, whatever, that says, hey, I've been doing this. I think I want to go over here. What are your thoughts on that? What would I need to do? What should I stay away from? You should be having conversations with people so that way you can sort of form some of your thoughts on it. And then when you get into that, you have to be able to ask for it. So, for example, when I was working for Kimberly Clark in Latin America, I was the head of sales for Latin America, and I was at the point where I needed to be more fluent in front of the board of directors. Never
mhm.
presented to them. I'd done tons of prep work for tons of board decks, but I had never presented, and I needed to have that experience. So in my annual review, I asked the president of Latin America, who was my boss, I said, I'd like to present to the board of directors this year. And he's like, ha ha ha. And he's like, no, seriously. And I said, no, seriously, I want to present to the board of directors. These are skills I need to learn and develop. And he said, "But sales doesn't ever present to the board of directors." And I said, "I bet you could make it happen, though." And he's like,
Yeah.
okay." We go along. 4 months later, we're going to present to the board of directors. And my boss walks in my office and he says, "So, you're going to present to the board of directors. What do you want to talk to them about?" And
Yeah.
so it was huge learning for me about creating the deck, getting the messaging, understanding what I should say, what I should not say, all of that, putting it together. But that opportunity never would have happened if I hadn't asked for it, because
Yes.
obviously it was nowhere in my boss's brain that his sales leader should be presenting to the board of directors.
Mhm.
So when you're going in and having the reviews, you need to think of tangible, actionable things that you can do. Now,
Yeah.
please do not go into your review and say that you expect your next role to be a 3 or 4 level skip. That makes
Yeah.
you look silly. And unfortunately, I've had many people do that. So if you
Mm.
are an account executive, you're not going to be a VP next. That's not how it works. You
No.
have to do the roles in between. So
Right.
please do not do that. And I know that sounds crazy, but I've had so many people do that to me. So instead, go in less with a specific ask of, I want this role, this place, this salary, and more about the experience. Meaning, so I have had, I'm making this up, my
Mhm.
sales customers up until this point have all been in the grocery channel. While obviously grocery is very critical, I need to learn more about the online business. So I would
Yes.
love in the next year that I get a project that is dealing with our online business. And it could
Yes.
be direct customer responsibility, it could be working on a specific project, but I need to learn the online business to grow my skills.
Mhm.
Awesome. Very clear, very tangible, and that tells me, there's a couple of things I could put this person on. And that's a very different ask than, well,
Mhm.
so far I've been doing, pick a small grocery chain somewhere, and now my next role should be Amazon. No,
Yes.
that's
Exactly. Yes.
that's a step
That's
too
too
far.
far of a stretch.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
step too far. But
Yes.
wanting that online experience to grow your overall skills and capabilities,
Absolutely.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
be very clear to yourself what it is that is interesting to you, that you
Yeah.
want to learn, and then practice, 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 practice asking for it.
Yeah.
And then after you buy, also, I should say, after you've come up with the idea, run it by your mentor, sponsor, coach as well to see if that makes sense to them, because they
Yeah.
can help you shape it in a way that might even be stronger.
I love that. I love that, Nicole. I think that's huge. And as you were sharing that, I was thinking about just my own journey from a volunteer leadership role, right? For organizations that we are leading as well. And a few years ago, I had the opportunity to serve our local realtor association as the president here in Colorado. I shouldn't say local, but for the state of Colorado. But prior to that, leading up to that, I knew that that was a part of my journey and something that I wanted to do. And so sitting down with the executive of the organization to say, here's where I envision myself in the future. Not next year, it's where I envision myself in the future. What am I missing? What am I not seeing? And what we discovered is that I had a ton of experience on the business side. I had a ton of experience in terms of the services that we provided. I did not invest any of my time or energy in the financial side of the business. So investments and the audit committee and the finance committee. And so what did I do? I took the next couple of years to get plugged into that segment of the organization so I could have a better understanding of it. And then I had a holistic picture and I think a solid foundation to take that next step of serving in the presidency role, right? And so
Absolutely.
it shows up in every space. Like, you have to understand, like, what is the next logical step?
Mhm.
What's the gap that I need to fill in, basically, right? Like, what is
Yeah.
the gap that I need to fill so that I am prepared to take that next step versus I'm going to take this huge giant leap that doesn't make sense, and nor do you have the exposure, the skill set, the knowledge, or the expertise to actually take that big giant leap.
It is not setting you up for success if you do that. That big giant leap
Exactly.
is gonna be a big giant plop usually.
Yes. And if you're speaking to women specifically, we experience that level of failure or lack of fulfillment and satisfaction for a task that we've been given. We just go back to what we're comfortable with and what we knew, and then we're right back where we started.
And here's the thing is that I want women to recognize you don't necessarily have to have every single skill buttoned up before you take that next role because
Yes.
women will only apply for a role if they've already got 95% of the skills as the average and men's average is
Yes.
48. And so you don't
I've
have to
seen
have
that
that.
statistic and it absolutely blew my mind. And I was like,
Oh,
you're correct. Because
yeah,
I want to make sure that I check all of the boxes before I even send my application over.
right.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
there's a difference between having the exposure versus
Mm,
being so bulletproof that I possibly cannot fail. And so, like, going back to the Kimberly Clark example of presenting to the board, was my next role going to be the president of Latin America? No,
yeah.
it was not.
Yeah.
That was not what I was looking after, and that's not what I was doing. But it was setting me up to be a general manager next, which is what I wanted to do. And so,
Yeah.
and when I went in to be a general manager for the first time, I realized I should have paid a lot more attention in finance classes in college than I did. And I had to learn that really fast. And
Yes,
that's okay.
exactly.
But you're not expected to know everything before you start the job. So
Yeah.
taking that daring step is okay, provided it's not a daring step into the Grand Canyon.
Yes, exactly. I love it. Oh my gosh, the level of agency that you are equipping folks with, like it's just this heightened level where people can truly advocate for themselves, right? So taking ownership of the development plan, looking at their communication skills. When you say clear, concise, and compelling, that's so interesting because I think we've recently seen that with the fast food executives that are making their appearance on social media. The compelling piece is what's missing, and I'm just what it's. I think it's kind of wrapped up now, but as it was unfolding, I'm like, get your CEOs off of TikTok. That's not what they're supposed to do. They have a skill set for something else, right? And so all of our communication, grand or small, clear, concise, compelling, like that's
Yeah,
really important when you're looking at those three C's. Um,
absolutely.
I love it. I love it. Nicole, well, first, we haven't told the listeners about your book. Tell us
Oh,
about the book and where they can find it. Let's start there. Taboo Topics. I
sure.
love it.
It's
Yes.
called Taboo Topics, Things Women Should Talk About But Don't. And there it is written, there's 24 chapters, and each chapter is its own subject, its own vignette.
Mm,
Because I I read everything. I love reading, and it doesn't matter if it's a business book or a vampire romance, I'm gonna read it. I read everything. And the thing that I see so often in business books is they're so good at explaining the problem and explaining the issue, but then they
mm,
don't really provide solutions. And
mhm.
so you're like, "Okay, I get that's a problem, but now what?" So
Yeah.
I wrote each chapter trying to help people understand not only what the issue is, but then some easy next steps so they can start to address it. So, like in the compensation chapter, I have an email template about how to ask your boss for a raise. In the mental load chapter, I have a whole bunch of questions that help you identify the mental load, how much you're doing, how much you should be doing, all of those kinds of things. So I've tried to turn it into very actionable pieces. And it was definitely a labor of love, but I wrote it just with the vision of if it's one less embarrassing moment for women, one less
Mhm.
challenge that they have that they shouldn't have, one fewer, whatever. That's what I wanted it to be, is just trying to help women be even more amazing than they already are.
Yeah. I love it. I love that. Taboo Topics. Fabulous. What do you have that you're working on right now that we need to know about? What's happening in the world of Nicole?
I am actually working on a couple of new keynotes. And so after I gave my TEDx speech, I am working on trying to develop a couple of keynotes for some businesses. And it is a labor of love. And I think about I believe it was Abraham Lincoln who said, I would have written you a shorter letter if I had had time. Being clear and concise takes so much time and effort. And I think Mark Twain said, if you want me to talk for an hour, I can do it now. If half an hour, I'm going to need a week. If you need me for 10 minutes, I'm going to need a month. And so
Yes.
getting that
Yes.
message clear and direct. And so there's a lot of scribbled red marks and pen, and I'm surprised I don't have pen on my hands right now, actually, all over the
Yes.
place from that. But I'm working on a couple of new keynotes. So that's the biggest thing I'm
I
working on
love
right now.
that. I love that. Well, best of luck with the keynotes. And you are absolutely correct. I think as I'm doing presentations, if I have to do a 60-minute or a 90-minute or even like a couple hour presentation, that's completely fine. About 6 months ago, I had to do a 10-minute presentation that was kind of a pitch for an upcoming presentation. That was the hardest 10 minutes of like in terms of speaking that I've ever had.
Oh
Hardest
yeah.
10 minutes. Yes.
Oh yeah. You walk after that and you feel like you just played a game of basketball for an hour and you're sweating and you're nervous and all the emotion. Oh my God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it felt like. I
Oh
was
yeah.
like, that was the hardest 10 minutes. Was it clear? Was it kind of concise? Because I don't remember anything. I just needed to stay on time. I love that. Okay. So, Nicole, what I typically ask guests as we wrap up our time together is a question about you.
Mm.
And it's a forward thinking question. This is a podcast all about leadership traits and qualities and attributes and skills. And so we touched on quite a few resources and recommendations that you take your personal clients through. As it pertains to you, Nicole, 10 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, whenever you'd like that to be referenced, in the future, how would you like to be remembered as a leader?
I love that question. I would say that I want to be remembered as someone who helped women thrive, that they had fewer obstacles, that they had more success, that their lives were more fulfilling, and they got more out of their careers because I somehow helped them. And that would be the biggest warm fuzzy I could ever have.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my gosh. I think that's fabulous. It's beautiful. And you're doing it, just so you know. So thank you for the work that you're doing right now. I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you, and thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Nicole, we will make sure that we drop your contact information. I know that you're on Instagram and LinkedIn. We'll make sure that we put your handles in the show notes as well so folks can connect with you. We'll also include a link to the book so that people can get a copy of Taboo Topics if they are interested in doing so. But I want to thank you for taking the time out to join us today. And more importantly, thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise with myself and the listeners today. I am truly grateful for that.
You have such a great venue here. I'm honored to be a part, so thank you again.
You bet. All right, you all, make sure that you share this episode with friends, family, loved ones that you think would benefit from hearing more about leadership. And if you yourself are on your leadership journey and you're growing and you found value in that, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. But until next time, we will see you all soon. Have a good one. Thank you for spending time growing with me on the Leadership That Shines podcast. Every episode is built around the values of impact, influence, and growth. And I want all three of those to show up in how you lead starting this week. If this episode added value to your week, share it with a leader in your world who is ready to grow. Subscribe and follow so that you never miss a week. And I'll see you in the next episode.